our Welsh language service, please press 9. If not, please hold. We don't audio record calls to this helpline. For information about what we do with personal data, please visit our website at ico.org.uk/privacy-notice. Our helpline is for organisations, people who work for themselves, and for members of the public. Please note, we will treat all people with courtesy and respect, and we expect the same. If anyone behaves in an unreasonable way to our staff, we will bring the call to a close. To help get you through to the right team, please select from the following 3 options. If you know the extension number of the person you want to speak to, please press 1. If you're calling from an organisation, a small club or association, you're a sole trader, or you work for yourself, please press 2. If you're a member of the public,
Number 3.
Here are your 3 options. To discuss an inquiry or complaint you've already sent to us, please press 1. To discuss a new inquiry or complaint with us, please press 2.
2.
We're now transferring you to a member of our team.
Good afternoon, Information Commissioner's Office. How can I help?
Yes, good afternoon. Can I ask who I'm speaking to?
My name is Liz. I'm one of the case officers.
Hi, Liz. I'm a member of the public, and I'll make some general inquiries regarding disclosure under the subject access request, and particularly with regards to the exemption of disproportionate effort. That's what my inquiry relates to today. Okay.
You want to give me a little bit of a background as to what's happened?
Okay, sure. So I've made a subject access request to an organization that records telephone calls. So like many organizations, you ring them up and they say, look, we're recording calls for training and quality purposes. I don't have a problem with that.
Yeah.
They've recorded the call, and then subsequently I've utilized that call recording as the basis to form a complaint regarding how I was treated. I've then proceeded to make a subject access request for my call recordings. Now, the organization has turned around and said, well, we can't locate, you have to provide us with your telephone number in order to locate the call recordings. And I said I would do ordinarily, but it's my policy to ring up on a private number. So me providing you with my call recordings, me providing you with my telephone number is not an identifiable data point for you to locate them on. And they said, well, we can't comply then because it would be a disproportionate effort on our part to go through every single call recording ever to pick out your call recordings. And I said, well, I understand that would be disproportionate, but every time I ring up, there are manual records that are created because you're like a formal organization. The call recording is often in addition to hand notes or written notes that you often do keep on the case file. And they said, no, we don't keep those records. And so the reason that they've declined is with regards to the disproportionate effort imperative. So when I rang up your organization and spoke to one of your colleagues, that where exactly is that specified in legislation, and your colleagues then informed me, well, that is not an exemption. So I've gone back to the organization and said, well, look, the ICO is stating that's not an exemption. And they're saying, no, we've contacted the ICO and they say that we don't have to provide you with the call recordings because it would be just a disproportionate effort on our part. Well, I said, well, it's only a disproportionate effort because you're failing to identify the particular data point. You're within your rights to identify me. And that's what the legislation requires of you. But like I said, if I send an email to you, you'll be able to give me that back. And they give it yes because, we have your email address. And I said, well, when I ring up, you record the calls, and it is your job to have the appropriate system in place to connect that call to the case file. If you've not done that, I'm just struggling to understand how now, because of a failure on your part or your systems being inadequate, that you're saying, well, we're not going to comply because it would be a disproportionate effort. So I've come back and I've spoken to one of your colleagues earlier on today, and they seem to be in agreement with them, saying that there's a disproportionate imperative and advise me go to your website. Now, after I've gone to your website, I've reviewed the disproportionate aspect that now is denying me. But the examples that are given in on your website do not correlate with what I am, my personal situation. I mean, the examples given in your website is, look, if there's a data breach, it would be disproportionate to send a notice to like 2,000 people or 20 million people. So we're not going to do that. That is understandable. But my concerns are that if this disproportionate effort, which I feel is subjective, because everybody can say, well, that's a lot of work for me to do because the system's not in place or something like this. That can be like a used as a backdoor to deny a subject access request. So the purpose of my call today was just to get a bit more clarity on this quite nuanced issue, like under what circumstances can an organization deny a subject access request where they're not relying on an exemption within legislation, but on the disproportionate effort? And the disproportionate effort in this circumstance... Sorry? Did you say something?
Yeah. Sorry, I think I maybe just had a little cough.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, no, I didn't say anything. Sorry.
Okay, all right.
No, I was just listening to what you were saying. So it's a bit of a tricky one, because on what you're looking for is a final outcome on this, and the ICO's final say on it. And really, that's not what the helpline is for. So you've had two different sort of views from two different people, and really, we're a regulator for data protection, and sometimes it's important that we have evidence as to what's gone on for us to make a final determination on whether there has or hasn't been an infringement of the legislation. So that's kind of one point, because I'm only getting your side of the story, and it's our job to be impartial and take an independent view. We don't work as your representative. So I think if this was me and you were coming to me with a formal complaint in a case, I'd ask you for evidence to see your request to them and their response to you. So it just depends on the organisation, depends on the size of the organisation, the background to it, how many types of calls they get. Is it a very small charity that doesn't have a lot of money? It is a very large organisation that receives thousands and thousands of calls every day. So when a data controller provides a response to a subject access request, under the law, they have to verify your identity. So part of that verification of who you are may mean them needing to know what the telephone number is to be absolutely sure that's your personal data. Because it does say in the legislation, if there is any doubt as to your identity, then they shouldn't provide it to you, because it's their job to protect personal data. So I suppose what they're saying, it would make their job an awful lot easier if they could have your phone number, but if the phone number was withheld in the first place, then that's going to make it an awful lot more difficult. It's difficult to track a call without the telephone number, and it might not be that the system's maybe necessarily linking a withheld number to a system, because that makes it more difficult, because there isn't that identifying information there. So, and the legislation also says what's reasonable as well. It's all about what's reasonable under the circumstances, and sometimes that's a little bit what's the word?
Subjective.
Subjective as to what is classed as reasonable, isn't it? If there's thousands and thousands of calls coming in every day without your telephone number, it's going to be much, much harder for them to identify that. And it's kind of what we would always say: what reasonable steps have they taken to provide you with your personal data, which is the copy of the call recording. So not knowing the telephone number, and if it's coming from a withheld number, makes it an awful lot more difficult for them. So I think probably if have you raised the complaint in writing with them?
Just to respond to some of the things that you said, the purpose of my call today is a general call. And the purpose of my call is not to like lodge a complaint with you, or I'm just I was trying to be as abstract as I could be for the information that I require. The information that I require from yourself is general information, specifically focused in on disproportionate effort being applied. Now, quite clearly, the underlying principle. So, I'm not looking to bring a complaint to yourself. I'm asking for general advice rather than specific advice. You've asked me, then can you just elaborate a little? And I just provided you with yourself with a scenario. I'm not speaking to you right now to get a final resolution from the ICO. The only resolution that I believe is appropriate in my circumstances, which I've made the organization fully aware of, is to pursue litigation action. But before I pursue litigation action, which is obviously, as you can appreciate, a costly affair, I would just want to make sure that I'm not in the wrong, or my position is justifiable. Now, with the aspect of, so we hit a key aspect there of reasonableness. The legislation, the Data Protection Act makes provisions for what is reasonable, and reasonableness can be construed as being very subjective. But also what concerns me is this disproportionate effort being applied. Because the flip side is that, as you can appreciate, all organizations that collect data are under a legal obligation to collect that data according to the legislation, just for the civilians' safety. Now, but the by complying to the law, like complying to a subject access request, that is something that they're not going to be remunerated for. Like, if, for example, when I make a subject access request, that requires an effort on their part to collect all that, make sure it's data compliant. But that is not their primary business operations. That is their duty into legislation, which they have to comply with. So it is always like an unnecessary burden on any organization, understandably, because it's an unnecessary burden to comply with the law, because you're not going to be like paid or financially remunerated for that. But irrespective, you have to comply with the law. So with regards to this disproportionate effort, it concerns me that if this is not checked, that can always be, it can also be classed as being very subjective. And I would like to think that the legislation is quite objective. Like, look, as long as I identify myself, which is reasonable, and they have taken the effort to record me, and they've made me aware, which is also reasonable. And when that organization contacts me, they contact me on a private number. I therefore also have a policy to call out on a private number. That should not adversely affect my legal rights. And number one. And number two is that it would be unreasonable for me to say, like, I rang up on an anonymous number. I'm not going to give you a date or time. You recorded me. Give me those recordings back. That, I think, would be very unreasonable on my part, because obviously I'm not providing with any identifiers to assist them. Now, that's an act of being unreasonable on my part. But if I've proceeded to facilitate as best as I can, saying, well, look, I did ring on a private number, so I can't provide you with a number. It's not that I can't. I don't think it's an identifier that's going to assist you. However, when I'm ringing yourselves up, like many organizations, you've identified who I am, all right, and you would have created a manual log or a record of my call recording. You can always refer to them to get a day and time. But for them to turn around and say, no, we don't even keep those logs, I said, well, that's contested. And for me to like provide them with further information I think is unreasonable on their part. And it seems to be like, I'm just trying to make sure that, that they are equally acting reasonably. Now, so hence why I wanted the clarity of this disproportionate effort. It's not an exemption, but the reason. Now, because if they had provided me, because as you are fully aware, there are exemptions. One of those is manifestly excessive or manifestly unfounded, but they're not relying on that. And if they're not relying on that to fail to disclose to me my data, and they're relying on this disproportionate effort, which is kind of subjective. So I've gone to your website, and the scenarios that I've seen there, I think that, yeah, I understand why a disproportionate effort imperative or a directive would be there. Because, for example, like I said, if a data breach happens and the organization needs to notify 1 million people that, look, it would be disproportionate for them to send like send a letter through the post to notify them, which is their obligation. But under those circumstances, it would be disproportionate because the cost alone would be so substantial. So there's that numbering issue there. But in these particular circumstances, your organization, for example, don't record calls, so you don't have the overhead. If an organization chooses as part of their policy to record calls, which they state for training and quality purposes, that's fine as well. But it comes, with added, it comes with an extra added responsibility. But if you're then no longer able in a position to meet that responsibility, that is clearly like a failure on your part. Like, for example, if I put a CCTV camera outside my house that records everybody going by, that's a very easy thing for me to do, and it's in my interest. But if then somebody turns around and says, well, you actually recorded me and I want a copy of that, well, because that falls under the data protection legislation, I then have to go and collect that, which is an effort on my part. But is it disproportionate? And so in a similar scenario, they've chosen to record the calls. They then need to have a policies in place, like how do we deal with anonymous calls? But more importantly, if they're going to have a policy saying that we're going to record all the calls that are coming in, then quite clearly they need to have a log, a manual log of when a written log of when somebody called in, which they can like search as an index. But for them to say, like, we're just going to record all the calls and we're not going to keep any of the log, I think it comes with recording people or recording comes with an extra responsibility. And if they're not holding up to themselves to that responsibility, which has been highlighted by me making a subject access request, then I feel I'm in a stronger position to argue my corner. But the purpose of my call today is simply to just get you to expand on scenarios, situations which you would think is reasonable to deny a subject access request on the grounds of disproportionate effort. Because that disproportionate effort has to be objective. Sending out 2,000 or a million privacy notices is disproportionate. I understand that. But making a subject access request for my call recordings, which you chose to record as an organization, and then which you chose not to log down manually, that this call was taken by this person, which were easily identifiable, that is quite clearly irresponsible on your part, and an argument can be made that your call recordings are not compliant with the data protection legislation. Because when somebody's made a request for it, you've said, oh, that's disproportionate. It's only disproportionate because you've not taken that extra step or mechanism in order to ensure that you are data compliant. So that's the basis of my call, is to see that, look, they've recorded me, they've accepted that they've recorded me, they've said that you called on a private number, we can't identify it. I said, look, you can't identify me through keeping the logs that you kept. They said, oh, we don't even keep the logs, which I'm in dispute with them about. But so if they didn't keep the logs, they're still I believe infringing the data protection legislation, because somebody would make what provisions have they made, or what steps have they reasonably taken to meet a subject access request if you're not keeping a log. So why are you not keeping a log? And if you are keeping a log, then quite clearly it's not disproportionate, because you can go to the log to find out when the call recording was. So I just wanted to get your opinion generally in relation to the disproportionate effort. Because as I've explained, when I've gone to your website, the disproportionate effort is reasonable. Is the ICO saying, look, this is at our device, which is very reasonable. It's very unreasonable for an organization to send out, I said, 1 million data breach notices, and so they don't have to do that. That's understandable. But under these circumstances, it's specifically relating to a subject access request, which they recorded me. They had a responsibility to ensure that that's protected. And by them saying, well, we've recorded you, and all anonymous calls, we're recording, we're saving, but we don't have a mechanism in order to extract that, quite clearly shows to me that they're not data protection compliant. And I just wanted your thoughts on the disproportionate effort in relation to call recordings. Does that make my position clear?
Yes, you've gone into that in an awful lot of detail, yes. So, as I said before, I'm not going to say whether I think there has or hasn't been an infringement in this situation.
You're not asked to do so. I'm sorry, I'm not asking you.
I'm sorry, sir, I've listened to you for a really long time, and I've listened to you complaints about, you've explained it about 3 times to me now. So, yes. Please, can I have an opportunity to speak, please?
Yeah, sure, I'll be quiet.
Because I know you've... Okay, so, I don't know... I know what you're looking for, but I don't know what you're looking for at the same time. I'm not going to say when think there has or hasn't been an infringement in this situation because of what I said before. I'd probably need to see the evidence, and maybe I would need to speak to the data controller, because you sound convinced that they've breached the legislation. So I'm not going to say to you whether I think for sure they have or they haven't. So that's why I'm thinking it might be best for you to get a final outcome by sending it as a formal complaint to us. So it depends on this. As I said before, you're wanting a general response from me, so I'm going to give a general response to you. So it depends on the nature of the organisation, depends on the size of the organisation, the resources that they've got, how they're already set up. There's nothing in the legislation that says that if somebody's making calls that with a withheld number that they have to keep a note of it somewhere. There isn't anywhere that says that they have to do that. So it is all about what's reasonable, and we may have to ask some questions as to what has gone on and what the background is. So I'm sorry, I'm probably not going to give you the final answer that you're looking for, but I think there's an awful lot of things that we'd have to take into consideration as to whether or not we considered it was a disproportionate effort or not. That's why I was saying before, it depends how many calls they take, what the nature of the business is, what the resources are. So, by the fact that you've rung from the withheld number does make it an awful lot more difficult for them. And as I said, they are allowed to ask for further information and further identifiers to get that. So I would have to ask them questions, is basically what I'm saying. And I know that maybe isn't what you're wanting, but I think it's very hard for me to say, whether they have or haven't infringed the legislation or not. And I know that's not an absolute outcome for you, but it depends on a lot of things. With data protection legislation, it isn't often cut and dried. It depends on the wider full picture, and we would have to take that into account.
Okay, have you finished? Yeah.
I'm sorry if I'm not giving you the answer that you
no,
wanted.
it's not. I'm sorry. It's not about you giving me the answer. Like I said, I'm not calling to get a resolution from yourself. All right. I think that's what needs to be clear. I'm not looking at for you to say, yeah, I'm right or they're wrong. That's not the purpose of my call today. I'm not because you're an advice service and reason. Yeah, you're right. Obviously, you can't give me. I'm not asking that from you. The purpose of this call, that would be unreasonable for me to ask, or look, say I'm right because of what? You don't have, like you said, you don't have the information in front of you, and I'm not lodged this as a formal complaint. That is not the purpose of my call today. And I'm not asking for a final resolution or for you to favor me or not favor them or anything like this. No, that is not the purpose of my call today. The purpose of my call today is for you to elaborate further on the objectively, nothing to do with this case, just generally to focus in on the disproportionate effort. Now, you've provided me with some information that disproportionate effort is externally subjective to the organization, like the size of the organization, the resources of the organization, and so on and so forth. So that's some information. So the purpose of my call today is just to elaborate further on the disproportionate effort, because obviously disproportionate effort can be seen as subjective as well. And the legislation, by its very nature, is not supposed to be subjective, it's supposed to be objective. Objective meaning that the same legislation applies to whether one organization is small or whether one organization is big. The legislation, the law is the law. Whether the size or I'm just struggling to understand what's the size got to do with anything. You have to comply with the law. Now, the penalties, I can understand that would come into the factor. Like if you're a multinational like Google, your obligation and penalties are going to be far more severe than somebody who's running a corner shop or something. I can understand that, but the law applies equally to whether you're a one-man operation corner shop or whether you're a multinational. I just wanted to focus in on the disproportionate effort aspect, as far as objectively speaking, on a general basis from your organization, that under what circumstances is that relevant to a subject access request? Because when I've gone onto your website, it's talking about a data breach and notification. So I just wanted to focus in on a subject access request and not the exemptions of unfounded or manifestly excessive, but the disproportionate effort aspect. Because by using the disproportionate effort, you're effectively denying me my data. And I just wanted to get your general opinions on focusing on the disproportionate effort, not to point blames, or not to point a finger or blame or uphold anything. Just under what circumstances, with regards specifically to making a subject access request. So, for example, can the organization turn around and say, well, we have your data, it's in a warehouse storage, all right, and it would require a lot of our time and resources to pull out that data. Would that be classed as a disproportionate effort? Because and if that is the case, then I would I'm just concerned about that, because why are you holding my data in a warehouse somewhere? So speaking generally, under what scenarios can a subject access be denied without the exemptions as I mentioned, but with specifically saying, well, that's disproportionate? Because the examples given on your website talk about privacy notice being informing people. That's not a subject. So the individual's data rights, they still have access to the data. And then under these circumstances, a subject access request is for me to ask for my data. And if they're saying it's going to be a disproportionate effort, that's not getting me my data. Does that clarify?
Right. Can I just ask, are you somebody that uses our services quite regularly?
I am, yes.
Are you somebody who has cases with us already?
I've had many cases with yourself in the past, yes.
All right. Can I just take your name, please?
I don't wish to give my name.
And why is that?
Because it's not necessary, because I'm making a general call today. Why are you asking for my name?
No, we do have regular contacts that we have, so it's always good to know, to try and get a background.
Okay, all right.
Then it might
well, it's good to know, yes.
Help with the case.
Yes, it's good to know, but I haven't brought a case to yourself. If I bring a case to yourself, I would identify who I am, but this is a general advice line, and I'm asking for general advice. So under the general advice, I don't need to provide my name or any further information. You understand?
Yeah, it's interesting that you're not prepared to give you a name, really.
Why is that interesting?
Because we do have lots of regular calls to us who are a restricted access.
I see.
People who aren't supposed to be calling our helpline.
I see. No,
so
it's
interesting that you're not prepared to give me your name, that you're a regular caller.
Oh, okay. Well, you've now justified to me why I should give you a name. I think that's reasonable. I mean, you're saying, well, I may be on a restrictive list, because obviously, as you can see from the call today, I'm not harassing or intimidating or penalizing you personally or any member of your staff. So if you're saying that's a reasonable request, we have a list, and we would like your name to check against it, and is that what you're saying to me?
Yes, if that's okay with you. Yeah,
okay.
You can share your name.
Okay.
Just, we are going to this in an awful lot of detail. We've gone round it about 3 times already, and you're asking for a very, very fine description of a response from the ICO when you've rung us twice already. So, it looks like you've had quite a bit of advice from us already. So that's why I was interested to know why you're just not prepared to give me your name when you're a regular customer.
I'm not a customer.
That comes to the ICO.
I'm sorry, I'm not a customer of yours. I'm a member of the public asking for general advice. If, for example, do you feel that I'm harassing or intimidating you, or do you feel threatened by me?
You are a little bit. You are being quite argumentative with me. You are, yes.
Okay, all right. Well, I'm quite alarmed and dismayed at the fact that you feel I'm being argumentative to you. I'm not trying to be argumentative, and it concerns me that you would feel that way, because obviously, I mean, if you're not comfortable with continuing this conversation, you're at liberty to say, I'm not comfortable. But I mean, I've not been rude or disrespectful to you. I'm not arguing with you, but what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to gain clarity of understanding. And the reason I've called several times today is because I'm getting conflicting information, and I'm just trying to understand. So if I don't understand something,
which is why I think you need to raise it as a formal complaint with us, rather than trying to get this over the helpline.
Yes.
So I really think you need to put it in writing to us, to be honest. I've tried my best to say what I think.
Okay.
To give you are asking for a general response, and I feel like I've given you a general response, and I think you're wanting more information than that.
No.
So I think.
Look, first of all, because you've made me aware that you feel uncomfortable continuing a conversation with somebody who's not giving you their name, then I'm going to be looking to bring the call to an end, because I don't want to make you feel more uncomfortable than necessary. I think I'm within my rights to not give you my name because it's not necessary for you to have the information. If, for example, you feel that I'm on some sort of list, I don't think I am on a list, because the only reason I ring up the ICO is simply to get advice and information. With regards to lodging complaints, I have lodged numerous complaints with the ICO in the past. I've been very dissatisfied, and the purpose of my call today is not to bring a complaint to you, because I understand that, number one, it takes several months for you to actually allocate the case. I find that disproportionate or unreasonable several months later. And then once you do allocate the case to somebody and they uphold my complaint, like you said earlier on in the conversation, you're not going to act as my representatives. You're gonna at most.
That's not our role.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, that's not your role. So in order for me to get a resolution, I feel that the only option for me is to pursue litigation action on my own behalf. The reason I'm
you're perfectly within your rights to do that.
Yes. So before I pursue the costly aspect of litigation action, I just want some general advice that I just ensure that I'm not going to go down the litigation action only to get information that was easily available to me at the start, because they may be right, all right, and I just need to at this point or junction in time, I feel strongly that they're clearly in the wrong, because I feel aggrieved that I'm not getting my data. So my only options, I feel, are to pursue litigation actions. Now, so that was the purpose of my call. I'm not here to harass anybody or intimidate anybody, but because you've told me that you feel uncomfortable, I would like to know on a personal basis, because as you can appreciate, this is not the first time that somebody's made me aware that the way I'm talking to people or the way I'm interacting with people makes them feel uncomfortable. And I'm just kind of like dismayed that I don't think I'm not being verbally aggressive, abusive, or anything like this, but this seems to be a recurring theme with me personally, and I would appreciate, before the call is ended, if you could just tell me what I'm doing wrong here, because obviously if you highlight to me that Mr. Hussain, you're being argumentative, all right, so I've told you my name there, it's Hussain. If I'm being argumentative, then I should be given an opportunity to rectify my conduct and behavior. But if nobody's going to tell me this, all right, then it leaves me in a very difficult situation. I don't think I'm doing anything wrong. I think I've been very clear, articulated. I may be at times forceful and what's the word? Not demanding, but assertive. Yes, that's part of my personality. Surely I cannot be held accountable for being forthright and assertive. Would you be able to tell me, like, in our call today, like, what have I done or said to make you feel uncomfortable?
Right, okay, you are quite forceful in your manner, and I have tried to advise you that I think you do need to bring it to us in writing, but you're pushing quite a lot on the call for a specific answer that it isn't necessarily what the helpline is here for, and I feel like I've tried to give you advice and you're still not happy with what I've said, which is why if you're wanting a more detailed response, which is why I think you need to ask for something in writing, which I understand you don't want because you don't want to have to wait and there's all of that problem, but I just, we've been on half an hour now and I've tried to give the advice that I think is right, and if you want more detailed responses, you need to put it in writing. I think I've tried to deal with it as best I can, and I'm not really sure that I can give you any more today, which is why I think you need to put things in writing. Okay,
well, that's fair enough, but an argument can be made that you're pushing me to put things in writing when I don't want to. But the question, I said, that's fair enough. You've told me you feel uncomfortable with the call. So the question, I said, the final question, in order to wrap up this call, I would like, you don't have to tell me this, but I would just like to know, what have I done to upset you?
Right, it's just, occasionally it was just the manner in which you were speaking, really. You have been really very forceful when I've tried to give you reasonable answers, and we've gone around you. You've told me your response about 3 times, what you're interested in, and I've tried to answer you, and I just don't feel like it's going anywhere. I'm quite an experienced person at the ICO. I've been doing this a long time. I know a lot about the law, and I've tried to give you my best advice. And I do found that you haven't accepted what I've said, and we've just kept going and going and going. And sometimes, in my experience, when it gets to that point, that's the point in which you do need to put it to us in writing. So I know you're pushing to get that response today, but it isn't necessarily what the helpline is here for.
Okay, right.
You asked for general advice, and I feel like I've given it. I just don't think I can take it any further today. I can give you your email address if you don't have it to write in with more detailed questions.
Okay, all right, but I mean, like, the question that we now moved on from your advice to my concerns I have regarding my own conduct, because you said you feel uncomfortable, like I'm pushing. But like I said, for example, if I don't understand something, I'm going to rephrase the question and ask it again, because I simply don't understand the response that's been given to me. And an argument can equally be made that yourselves have been quite pushy for me to put a formal complaint in, which was never my intention. My intentions were to get some general advice. And if you've said to me that, look, I'm a very experienced person, and I've given you the advice, I don't know what that. I'm ending this call. I still don't know what general advice is to focusing on the.
But it's the third time you've called us, so do you not understand from any of the three calls you've had?
I in previous calls.
It's all to do with in terms of an organisation being proportionate. It depends. It depends on lots of different factors. There isn't one factor. I've said before, it depends on the resources, it depends on the number of calls, depends on the site. There isn't one specific answer. So I hope I've tried to answer that in a general way as possible.
Okay, all right.
Which is why we need to probably look at it as a complaint. And I'm sorry if you feel like I'm forcing you into it.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to, but just if you're wanting that answer, it might be the best way to get it.
I think, like I said, I feel the best way is to take litigation action. But the reason I keep on calling is because your staff members keep giving me different advice. So I keep on going back to them. They're giving me different advice. Like the what I understand is this: there is no exemption in legislation for disproportionate effort. That's clear to me. If there's no exemption, then I should get my data. That's clear, and that's what one of your colleagues has told me, that there's no such thing as an exemption of disproportionate effort. All right. So when I've gone back to them, they said no, the ICO have told us that we are right. So then when I've come back, they said, oh, well, yeah, there is some sort of disproportionate effort. All right, so they look on our website. So we're going to go onto the website, looked on the website. The disproportionate effort does not relate to a subject access request, but like I said, a privacy notice. Hence why I'm calling back. So for me to call back several times is simply for me to avoid ensuring the fact that once I go down the litigation route, that obviously I'm not going to be surprised with all that. Actually, they are in the right because of this exemption or case law. I mean, that's another case that I wanted to ask: has the ICO pursued any case law regarding this disproportionate effort? Because this obviously is going to be now case law if I pursue litigation action. So hence why I was just wanting clarity. But that's what the purpose of the call was.
Off the top of my head, I can't give you any case law. If it's the case law that you're looking for, you will have to put that in writing to us.
Yeah, that's fine. But then obviously you've gone on, and this seems to be a recurring theme regarding my attitude and behavior or conduct, which I think, yes, I'm an alpha male. I'm very assertive. I speak my mind, but I shouldn't be discriminated against, as you can understand, regarding my personality.
Right.
But that's all. I mean, you were attempted to explain to me why you feel uncomfortable. All I can say is I'm apologizing if I've made you feel uncomfortable. My aims were not to harass or intimidate or antagonize you in any way. My purpose of my call was simply to gain information. As you can appreciate, I'm a member of the public. I'm a civilian. This is my time and resources which are not being remunerated to me. The call may have taken half an hour, but your time is being remunerated. You're doing your job effectively as you can. But this is my time, and I sometimes feel that people don't understand that obviously your time this is my time. I'm giving up in order to my time is equally valuable, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful or discourteous to you, but I am trying to be assertive, and I don't think there's anything wrong with being assertive. So if there's nothing else that you would like to add, like I said, I've apologized if I've made you feel uncomfortable or if I've been and I think we can just look to end the call there.
Okay, so did you say your name was Hussein?
Yes.
Are you not happy to give me your surname, Hussein?
This is would you like to put me on a list?
No, it's just interesting because if you do call back, then it's just interesting to know, you know, who's called back and, you know, for what reason. So,
but you know, like you're part of the ICO, and you know, you don't record these calls because you know that's a disproportionate data collection. But now all of a sudden you want my full name, in order to, are you going to retain that data?
not necessarily. It's just interesting to know, you know, if you've called 3 times already, so that if,
And
you know, maybe other people can be prepared in case you call.
Yeah, and I'll just elaborate further. Every time I do call, I do record my calls. All right, so this call is being recorded.
I did wonder if you did that. Yeah.
Okay, well, you could just ask me that, and I like I said, but you understand that it's not under. I'm not obliged to inform you that I'm recording this call, am I?
Yeah, but it would be polite if you
Yes,
did do.
polite and niceness, and you know what you find interesting is irrelevant to the fact of the law. Am I legally obliged to provide that information to you? No, I'm not. Are you legally obliged to inform me that the call is being recorded? Yes, you are. All right. So there's a distinction there between yourself and myself. Being polite is one thing, and I've tried to be polite. If you had asked me the direct question, is this call being recorded, I would have said yes, it is. And obviously the purpose of me recording this call is for this very simple fact. I'm going to go away and I'm going to review this call recording, and I'm going to say, well, what have I done and said in order to upset you? That's right, isn't it? I mean, that's the only way I can become a better person.
That's your choice if you wish to do that.
Yes, I mean, obviously I don't want to be antagonizing, you know, people that are trying to do, professionals like yourself trying to do your job. But you know, it's like you're asking me for my name, and you're telling me that you're an experienced ICO handler, and you know the fact that if I give you my name, then that's data that you're collecting then, and that can be classed as profiling. And you know, as an ICO, I'm just a juxtaposition because you informed me earlier that you have a list of people that you ban from contacting you. Now, I've asked about this list previously, that people have made me aware of this. There has to be some serious like wrongdoing on the members of the public in order to do that. And I would just think, why would somebody look to harass members of your staff for? That is just ludicrous unless I know you personally. I don't know you personally. It's just idiotic or asinine for me to like use bad language or be intimidating or swear. I don't know you. The purpose of this call is for advice. I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. All right. I know.
Okay, and I feel like I've given you the advice there. I just don't think there's anything further we can talk about today, to be honest.
And I was happily. I apologize if you felt intimidated or upset. And then I was looking to end the call, but then you said, "Oh, you want my name?" And I'm just concerned why you want my name for. It's not necessary as your job, and you're saying it's interesting. Well, there are many interesting things that I would like to know about you. All right, how much do you get paid? That's interesting to me. But I'm not going to ask you that question because it's rude and not necessary. So there's many things that I find that are interesting. But I was looking to end the call, but then.
Okay, I'm sorry, sir. I think I am going to end the call now.
Yeah,
I'm really sorry.
Yeah, I think
we've discussed everything.
Yes,
we've got as far as we can.
Yes, and I think you should equally reflect on the way you speak to members of the public, because you're asking for unnecessary information. So it's an opportunity for you to grow as an individual as well. That you shouldn't be asking inappropriate questions to people. Thank you very much. But you should. Yeah, goodbye. Goodbye.
Bye.
Idiot. List. All right, ring on a private number. I'm not doing anything wrong. All right, and you're saying I'm being rude and intimidating. Of course, I'm recording this call. This is one of the reasons I do record the call. She's dealt with me before. That's why she recognizes me. And I said, I'm Mr. Hussain. Are you not prepared to give me your first name? Yeah. Why? Why should I give you any name? It's not necessary. You see how these people operate? They operate in a power structure which is there to intimidate you. So I'm going to record this call. Yeah, I've recorded this call and I'm going to publish it on my website. All right, I'm going to make other people aware of it. That you don't need to be intimidated by these people. These people are here. I'm here as a civilian, as a member of the public, to equally enlighten my fellow citizens regarding the abuse of power under these circumstances. She did not answer my question. I asked her several times to be general regarding disproportionate effort. She refused to provide me with that information. And she's trying to be specific and telling me about all this. Like, the law does not work like that. I've quite clearly been very articulated. I may have gone through many times, but this is quite clearly, I feel, quite clearly discriminating against my gender and trying to convey me as a toxic masculine person, when all I'm trying to do is being open and honest and being forthright and being general. All right. So when I'm being general and I'm being courteous and respectful, and obviously maybe she can understand that maybe I come from an ethnic background because my English isn't perfect. So maybe that is a form of discrimination. But can you see the way this call was handled? Yes, I also want to educate my fellow citizens about how to deal with the toxic femininity or people that choose to play the victim role. She quite clearly then starts playing the victim role, that she feels uneasy with the way I'm speaking to her. I asked her several times and she had failed to elaborate or expand on the disproportionate effort. And anybody listening to this conversation can quite clearly determine whether she answered the question. I was speaking general terms. What is the disproportionate effort and what provisions has the ICO made in order to ensure that disproportionate effort cannot be used as a pretext to deny a subject access request? And she seems to be saying, it's very wishy-washy, put a complaint in, who are you, what's your name, you understand? What is this? This is a general advice, and quite clearly she's I believe that she may have dealt with me in the past, and once again, she asked me a question. I know the law. I know I can record them, and I know I can publish this recording without anybody's permission, because obviously this is a public line, and it's my choice. But yeah, I think I will be publishing this so other people can listen into this call, because I've not been specific about anything. I was just simply being general, asking for general advice, and it seemed that she didn't want to give me any general advice. She didn't want to discuss the subject. She wanted me to, who was forcing something through to somebody. I was asking for some general information. I did not say, look, they're wrong, I'm right, help me, say I'm right, say I'm right. I didn't ask her that question. I said, look, generally speaking, can you tell me regarding the disproportionate effort exemption? Because it's not an exemption. They keep on giving me different advice, and so this is concerning to me, because if it's not an exemption, it should be complied with. It's not being complied with. I've gone to the website, and so she was trying to say, oh well, you're ringing up several times. I'm trying to make it clear that the reason I'm linking up is so I understand something. When is it a crime to try to understand something? I don't get it. All right, I don't understand the legislation that you're now dictating to me. And the reason I don't get it is because I've gone to the legislation, I've read the legislation, I know how the law works. Now, what such an organization such as the ICO want to bend and twist the law in order to make it better for them. Not the members of the public that are being affected like myself, but make it better for them in order for them to whitewash things. She quite clearly is fully aware that in order for me to lodge a complaint, that helps their business operations. They're then going to say in their statistics that, oh, we've done X number of complaints, we've dealt with this, we're justifying our wage check, we're justifying our existence as an ICO. The reality is that they're not going to take this case any further. The only option for me is to pursue litigation action. That's what I've been very clear about. My call today was not to, get them to take on my case or do something in my favor. They require members of the public. They've told me they need me as a member of the public to raise a complaint in order to justify their existence as a regulator. And as a regulator, they don't act for me. They don't act on my behalf. They're not going to look at my particular case in isolation. What they're going to do is they're going to look at my case regarding the organization, look at if there's many other complaints, and at best going to advise them, oh, look, you should do it this way. He's right. Look, we're advising you. All right. And on advice 6, 7, 8 months, a year later, they're just not going to do anything. The organization's not going to be financially penalized. Very, very rarely are they going to take litigation action on my behalf, on my complaint. All right. They're just not going to do that, because that's not that's what they should be doing, but that's not what they ideally do. They're looking to do is maximize their own efficiencies, maximize their own financial resources, and to take litigation action where there's a possibility of losing a costly case battle, they're not willing to do that. So what they're trying to do is just trying to fob me off, and you can see this is just quite clearly a fobbing off situation. She was trying to railroad me into putting in a complaint, and I said no, and I was quite clear I didn't want to do that. And so then she started asking me for my name. She knows the fact that she shouldn't be asking me for my name if I rung as a general member of the public and as a private call. And she goes, that's very interesting. Well, like I said, there's many interesting things that I find. She's a very senior person in their organization, and she finds to ask me inappropriate questions like, what's my name? That is an inappropriate question when I'm speaking on a withheld number, asking for general information. It's not necessary for the ICO to record my name. But she was then saying, oh, we need to check that you're not on some sort of list of ours to ban me. Why are they trying to ban me? I don't need to be banned. All right, they're trying to ban me because she was made aware that the call is being recorded, and there's nothing that they can do about me recording the calls and publicizing, and which I fully intend to do now. But it's just they, and this is where it comes down to. Fundamentally, they want to record me or members of the public without any impunity or without any consequences, as such as the organization I was mentioning. Yeah, we're going to record you. Yeah, but then they're not complying with the legislation. This ICO have made chosen not to record the calls because they know there's an overhead, because they then will be in breach of the legislation if they don't provide the call recordings. So, but can you understand how they're trying to ensure the fact that organizations are well placed and protected and members of the public are, and I as a member of the public trying to ensure that no, this is not right. You need to ensure people, you need to act on behalf of the people that you serve, not the people that you're supposed to regulate. And this is where it comes down. My final words are this, that they are meant to regulate those organizations, not to regulate people. And what they're effectively trying to do now is trying to regulate civilians that they're meant to serve, such as myself, who's taken to the time and effort to inform, in the past, inform them of data breaches, and nothing's happened. Now I'm ringing for advice, and they're just trying to identify, and effectively they're trying to regulate members of the public rather than doing their job, which is to regulate organizations that come under the Data Protection Act. So you see how the twist, and this is a recurring theme with many organizations. They are victimizing members of the public over and above, having to do their job, because what it comes down to is this: they can't do their job. They are a regulator. They can't regulate. They can't do anything. All because even this, like they've told you, 3 months is a turnaround time before a case is even allocated. In the past, that's been 6 to 8 months. All right, and they've always been under-resourced. They don't want to take on cases. They just want the money, so they can't do their job. And ultimately, what they're trying to do is appease me. I know the law. I fully read the legislation. I know what exemptions there are. The organizations out there are not fulfilling the data protection legislations. And the ICO, Information Commissioner's Office, as a regulator, is not fit for purpose to regulate the wider community or the wider organizations. So it's just all passing a book from pillar to post and giving me incorrect advice that I should bring it to them and they're going to do something. They ain't going to do nothing. They're not there to do something. They're there just to take my personal details and create statistics for themselves to justify their own existence. Now, yes, maybe I've been repetitive, but in order for me to understand things, I need to be told the same thing in several different ways in order for me to drill home. So that's what I was trying to get from her, trying to tell me about this disproportionate effort. And she kept going on about, organizations specific and this and the other. That's just ludicrous. Where is the law? Where in the law does they make provisions for different size of organization? It doesn't. Focus in on the law, focus in on the legislation, focus in on the sections of the legislation, not what your personal interpretations are. And that's what it was. It was just a personal interpretation. And then obviously I took issue with the fact that I feel, you can see I'm triggered now. I feel offended. I feel upset the fact that she was trying to make that I am being negative and my personality and conduct is being negative, or I'm intimidating. So I apologize. I've got no issue with apologizing for how other people feel. I can't control how other people feel. I can control my own conduct and behavior, hence why I record these calls, hence why I recorded this call, hence why I'll be reviewing it to determine why exactly am I going wrong, and hence why I'm going to publicize this and let everybody else in the wider world tell me exactly what I'm doing wrong. I would like to know what have I done or said that has created a situation where professionals doing their job feel uncomfortable speaking to me. So I would like, I would like to see how other people review my interactions and to give me some constructive feedback. Because being assertive, being masculine, being dominant, being authoritative, being who I am, cannot be. I cannot be discriminated for that. What would you like me to do? Would you like me? I don't know what you would like me to be. I'm not going to change my personality. I like the fact that I am assertive, articulated, intelligent, and being able to get my point across. Now, if other people are going to give me logical fallacies and manipulate my conversation or try to intimidate me and manipulate me and try to trigger me, and I'm reacting to that, and then they're gauging my reaction in order to justify their own failures, then quite clearly I'm going to be upset. But I am within my rights, and I encourage anybody and everybody to record these people that are quote-unquote professionals only doing their job when they can't do their job, and they look to intimidate members of the public and society at large by discriminating against us and saying the fact that, oh, it is you that's doing something wrong. I was very polite and courteous. I even apologized if I've done anything wrong but I've asked, what have I done? All right, how can I rectify? What have I said that has upset you? And she was looking for an excuse to get upset and triggered in order to justify to bring the call to an end. And when I had apologized and looked to close up the call, she said, oh, by the way, what's your full name? So it's just interesting to me. Why is it interesting to you? Do your job, which you're failing to do. You can't do your jobs properly, and you just want to profile members of the public and regulate members of the public rather than doing your regulatory role as an information commissioner's office and giving advice that is relevant. If they say, look, this is where it says in the legislation, I would have dealt with that. They told me, no, it says on our website. I went and dealt with that. Went on their website, discovered that's got nothing to do with the subject access request, but to do with, privacy notices. So I was confused. I came back, and now I've given up nearly an hour of my life, an hour of my time, in order to gain clarity of understanding. I'm not going to get this hour back, but I've made sure that I've recorded it so other people can review this and to try to understand the fact that these people, because they're in a position of power, it is our failure, it is my failure for failing to hold them to account. It is my responsibility and members of the public's responsibility to hold them to account. And anybody out there can simply call somebody up, all right, record it and publish it on YouTube or any other platform to make the public aware of this fact, so people become more educated. It's an educational tool that you should be educated, and you should not cower to people that are in positions of authority and power in order to hoodwink you and undermine you. And I would encourage anybody to be more assertive and in dealing with people like this, because I think she's a toxic feminist, all right, a toxic femininity there, looking to easily jump to the victim role. She was effectively trying to say that she's been victimized by me, when my focus on several occasions was to get her to focus in on my inquiries, which was to say, what advice can you give me on the disproportionate effort example or exemption or directive, or is there any case law regarding this? Are you more familiar with this specific piece of issue or legislation or anything like this? And she was basically just looking to fob me off, and by fobbing me off, all she's done is further antagonized me. I would ordinarily lodge a complaint about her, but what's that going to really achieve? Also, I won't be doing that, but I've made this recording, I'll publicize it, I'll make other people aware of it, that whenever you deal with an organization, particularly if you're dealing with the ICO or in fact any other organization, record them. All right, be clear, be precise in what you're requesting. Be patient. Do never ever use bad language or be disrespectful and discourteous. Always win the moral argument or moral high ground. She was not in a position to win the moral argument. I asked her, what have I particularly done? All right, if you feel upset, I'm apologizing. So I win the moral argument. It's not necessary to be losing your temper, getting aggressive, shouting and swearing. That's just clearly profane on the caller's part, on my part. If I had acted that way, I acted reasonably, respectfully. She's then giving me, I've taken up my time. She's taken up half an hour of her time to mess me around, all right, to effectively trigger me. I've now wasted an hour of my life, all right, that I'm not going to get back or be remunerated for, just simply to highlight their failures. I'm doing a public duty. She's not doing a public duty by looking to fob me around and then trigger me and then ask me for my name in order to understand who I am, in order to put me on some sort of list so they can look to ban me. All right, I don't need to do that. I don't need to be put on some list because obviously they're looking to take the easy route out, knowing the fact that, the organization fully knows that I record the calls and make it available to members of the public as a civil duty, as a civil obligation, as my right to try and protect my fellow citizens from abuses of power and malfeasance such as this. Ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous.